Good evening and welcome to our June 12th, 2018 Ogden City Council meeting. This is the 6 o'clock special city council meeting. And we appreciate all of you being here, and we're sorry we're just a little bit late today, but we'll get moving. The first item on our agenda, by the way, let the roll call reflect that all council members are present with the exceptions of Councilmember Stevens, who has asked to be excused. And we'll turn the time to Vice Chair Nadolski for the pledge.
Thank you, Chair Hare. Bill rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, if you would please join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is a recognition of Juneteenth Freedom Day, and we've asked Councilmember White if she would make that presentation.
I would love to make the presentation. Tonight I get to read the joint proclamation of the City Council and Mayor declaring June 16th, 2018, Juneteenth Freedom Day in Ogden City. Whereas Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration commemorating the abolition of slavery in the United States and the emancipation of African American slaves throughout the Confederate South. Union soldiers landed at Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865 with news that the war had ended and the enslaved were now free more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued on January 1st, 1963. Until that day, slavery had been relatively unaffected in Texas by the Emancipation Proclamation, and Texas had been viewed as a safe haven for slave owners to relocate with their slaves because the state experienced no large-scale fighting or significant presence of Union troops. And whereas on the first Juneteenth, a name that combines June and 19th, the people of Texas were read General Order Number 3, which stated, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and free laborer." The Juneteenth announcement was met with jubilation that spread throughout the country as African Americans relocated to neighboring states and became reacquainted with family. And whereas the first Juneteenth celebration was a time for reassurance, prayer, and the gathering of family members, Juneteenth continued to be widely observed in Texas decades later, with many former slaves and descendants making an annual pilgrimage back to Galveston. Juneteenth today continues to grow within communities and organizations throughout the country. Numerous local and national Juneteenth organizations have arisen alongside older organizations with the common mission of promoting and cultivating knowledge and appreciation of African American history and culture, while encouraging continuous self-development and respect for all people and cultures. And whereas during the 2016 legislative session, Utah became the 45th state in the nation to have an official state observance on Juneteenth Freedom Day, which is commemorated annually in Utah on the third Saturday in June. The Juneteenth commemoration has been observed in Utah as a community freedom festival for more than 75 years by various communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell hereby proclaim June 16, 2018 as Juneteenth Freedom Day in Ogden City. We encourage residents, schools, businesses, and community groups to celebrate Juneteenth as a day of remembrance and celebration. We appreciate the significant efforts of those in our community, and state representatives make this special holiday an official observance. Chair Hyera, I would like to approve this joint proclamation as Juneteenth Freedom Day.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember White, seconded by Vice Chair Nadolski, to approve this joint proclamation declaring June 16th, 2018, Juneteenth Freedom Day. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Wonderful. Looks like we have Betty Sawyer with us. Come on forward. This is picture time.
With me tonight, Dr. Nicole Corbin. Wonderful. And I said, you all are probably tired of hearing me talk, so. I'm gonna make her talk.
Okay, got to go down the line and shake everybody's hands too.
Okay, I'll stand for,
I'll let you
start from here. Okay, you can start from there. Hello, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, I did. Thank you.
It's easier that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, he's messing. Here, coming up for the photos.
We got to get in between the tall guy, you know.
No, that's a good idea.
Oh, to see some.
No, like I'm the short.
Yeah, get it.
Yeah, you come up too. Yeah.
Bookends.
Want to get in front?
It's nice that we have two tall guys.
No.
We'll fit all in.
1, 2, 3. Let's do another one. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
The film's cheap. Get another one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love to hear from you.
He's very confident.
So Betty asked me to share a few things. I have to stand on tiptoes. But June 16th is Juneteenth within Ogden City. And thank you so much for recognizing this very historic and important event, not only for African Americans, but for all of our communities, because all of this is our history. But before we get to Saturday, let's not forget Friday, which is the kickoff of this festival, and it will be held at Weber State's Davis campus. And we're launching it with a town hall meeting, which we will launch the Utah Black Roundtable, which is a collection of individuals across different political stripes, religious stripes, concerned citizens who are coming together with the aim of collaborating on important issues that affect the underrepresented and unrepresented. So I would hope that you might find some time to come out to Weber State's Davis campus at 6 p.m. And see what we are laying out, and also participate in some of the beginning of the festivities, which includes some conversations between the youth and the elders. And I understand there's going to be some drumming and food and such things. So I encourage you to come on Friday and Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait, what's your name again?
Nicola Corbin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. Okay, next item on our agenda is our common consent portion of our agenda. This is all, there's 5 items concerning the fiscal year 2019 fee schedule amendments, as well as a fiscal year 2018 budget amendment for the year-end adjustments. Do I have a motion?
Chair Heyer, I will go ahead and make a motion that we set the public hearings for June 26, 2018 for the 5 items listed under common consent.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Blair, seconded by Councilmember Lopez, to approve the common consent agenda and set the public hearings for June 26th. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, that passes. Next item is public hearing, fiscal year 2019 tentative budget. Ms. Janine Eller Smith. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate this opportunity to address the council about one of your most important responsibilities, and that is the budget. So I just wanted to briefly review our process to this point. May 1st is when the mayor and Mr. Johnson presented the budget to you and you accepted it for review. And since then, we've had 4 really intensive work sessions. And that brings us to today, June 12th, where you're going to take action on the tentative budget, which is an action that's required by state law, and hold the public hearing, and then also consider setting a public hearing for the final budget. And of course, that is an important decision that you're making tonight because it's going to determine whether or not you accept for review the proposal from the administration to go through that truth and taxation process. Some of the key changes in the budget that we've reviewed for you over those work sessions is the proposed property tax increase. And I want to make it clear that those revenues are not included in this tentative budget. So when adopting the tentative budget, you're not adopting a tax increase. There are funds for step increases for public safety employees and merit increases for regular employees, also a COLA. Normally, this would have been a year that the administration went through a benchmarking process, and they started down that process and decided that they needed to relook that and determine which were better cities for going through that benchmarking. And so that was one reason why they are proposing the COLA. And there's also some funding for several CIP projects for park improvements, facilities maintenance, and such. So just sort of a general overview for the major funds that are in the city's budget. And you can see percent change over last year's budget. So it's an increase of close to 11%. You'll notice that there's a huge increase in the airport, and that's due to a $5 million grant that the city received. There's also some additional increases in the utilities, and that is because there is an anticipated rate increases in those utilities, and then of course that translates into more CIP projects. There were some significant changes in the staffing details. They're they added 14 positions, got rid of 5, so that's a net 9 positions. There are a couple of other positions that are proposed for if you go through the truth and taxation process. Of course, you know, the employees are an important aspect of making the city run, and it's an expensive endeavor to fund all those increases in COLAs. So citywide, it's almost $2.3 million to fund those increases. One thing that you asked to make sure that we pointed out to the citizens that this budget does include health benefits for council members. That's something that's never been provided before, although all of the cities that we currently benchmark against do provide health benefits for council members. And that's a $70,000 cost that's included in this budget. In a $180 million budget, it's not a huge amount. Revenues have been pretty good this year. We are getting some additional property taxes from expiring RDAs. Sales tax has had a good increase, but we have had some decreases in franchise and telecommunications. And I just wanted to point out that the proposed property tax increase would generate another $1.2 million in property taxes. Council's established 7 priorities that they like to look at and evaluate the the budget when you're reviewing it and make sure that it's hitting these priorities. Active and healthy living, multimodal transportation, community and building, outreach and engagement, fiscal sustainability, public safety and other essential services, and arts and culture. And I just want to touch on just a couple of those for today. First, there's a lot of money in the budget for public safety and those other essential services, which is the core of the services that the city provides. There's a proposal for upgrades to Station 4. It's now the only station that hasn't been upgraded. It was built in the 60s, and so it's in dire need of some upgrades. Some new equipment for the firefighters and police, safety equipment. Those step and COLA increases, of course, are included in there. An additional assistant prosecutor. We require a lot of our police department, and that in turn generates a need on the other end to make sure that they're carrying out and following through with all the work that the police department's doing. And as I mentioned, the utilities replacement continues. There's significant facilities maintenance funding. I think this is the first year they've actually funded it at the level it should be funded. And then there's funds for streets and active transportation as well. For arts and culture, the doubling of the Twilight Concert Series. Ogden's definitely upped its cool factor this summer. And I appreciated the mayor pointing out last week or the week before that, if you can't find anything to do in Ogden this summer, it's your fault, because they've got lots of great things going. They're doing some additional upgrades to the amphitheater, repairing the water feature out there, which has been not working for some years. We've got the corner information hub going that's going to be a ticket hub and information center. They're trying to get additional activities at Union Station so that we can really utilize that facility to the greatest extent possible. And of course, we always do the arts grants funding. The proposed changes in the Schedule A make some changes to the general fund, recognizing some revenues and that hadn't originally been included, and also the pool expenses, removing those. We had removed the revenues but not the expenses. Making some changes to the CIP and BDO lease revenue, removing a transfer to the East Washington RDA. That was for a project that's not quite ready to go. We'll just be returning that $25,000 to fund balance. And then just lining up the major grant funds with what was proposed in the annual action plan. And so that is a difference of $426,000, which brings the total city budget to $184,902,875. So that's just an overview of the tentative budget. As we progress and consider the final budget, I'll be pointing out some additional information and having some discussions about levels of service that the city's providing and what it takes to do that. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to do my best to answer
Any
them.
questions for Janine? Thank you. Good presentation. Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to this, to us concerning the tentative budget? Now would be the time. Well, I see no movement. Do I have a motion?
Motion to close the public hearing. Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Nadolski, second by by Councilmember Blair to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, let's have a motion on the ordinance.
Chair Heyer, I will go ahead and make a motion to adopt proposed ordinance 2018-9.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Blair, seconded by Councilmember Lopez to adopt ordinance 2018-9. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair?
Aye.
Councilmember Choburka?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Nadolski? Chair Heyer?
Aye. That passes. Okay. Next item is new business concerning certified tax rate, and we have Ms. Eller-Smith again. Welcome back.
Thank you. So I purposely kept my presentation on the budget a little bit shorter because I wanted to spend some time on the certified tax rate because it can be kind of confusing. And so I wanted to do just briefly a kind of a refresher course. And hopefully this will be year 3 that it's now starting to ring true to some of you, and you'll have seen some information and understand. So the property tax in Utah is what they call is based on revenue neutrality, and that's kind of unique. It means that it generates the same dollar amount of property tax that we got the previous year. So we're given a rate that generates the same dollar amount that we received the previous year, and then we are allowed to get some new growth. Ogden City's current tax rate is 0.003103, and that's about 18% of the total property tax bill for most of the residents in Ogden City. It is one of the highest in the state. People complain about that, and we have to own it. That's true. The average home value in Ogden is $196,000. Talking to the executive director in Murray just last week, and she mentioned that in Murray, the average home price in 2017 was $315,000. It costs exactly the same amount to provide services to a $315,000 house as it does to a $196,000 house. And so that's why the rates need to be higher to generate that same amount of revenue. This is the process the state goes through to determine it, and I won't run you through it, but they take the total value of all the property in the city, and then they do some voodoo, and then it comes out with the tax rate at the end. They adjust it for collection rates. Do
you want to use a different word other than voodoo?
I think it might be math.
Math? It's definitely math. They make sure that they account for any adjustments that have occurred during the year, the collection rates, and then once they determine what the value is, then they can subtract the new growth from that, figure out what the previous year's property tax was, and they use that as a divider to determine what the rate will be. Now, that's not the current number. That's just an example that the state has on their website. So that's not the city's number, but that's how the process works. You've all seen this chart for several years, couple of years. Because the rate is designed to just generate the same amount of tax that we got the previous year, if the property values go up, then the rate goes down. And so you can see this in this rate chart from 2002. Last couple years, we've maintained the rate. In some of the years where there might have followed a recession, the rate actually increased a little bit. But you remember 2 years ago, before the council determined to hold its first truth in taxation hearing, we had not increased tax rates for 30 years. And you can see the heavy dive in those early years. I thought this was interesting as I was doing some research and trying to find some information that I thought you might find helpful. I took a look at the 1997 certified tax rate, which was in the FY 1998-99 budget, so a budget that was 20 years ago. And you can see that at that point, the three main taxing entities in Ogden City, the county, and the school district all were pretty equal. And at that point, the city's portion of the tax rate was about 32%. Last year, this is what it looked like. The city was at 18%, the school district at 51%. And the county has pretty much maintained their rate at around 21%. So because the property tax base is based on revenue neutrality, it does not adjust for inflation. There's no factor in that math problem that adjusts for inflation. And so what has happened over the years is the dollar, the buying power for the city has been eroded significantly. And you may recall that I did this last year, that should say FY 1998 to FY 19 comparisons. There's fiscal year 1999, those are the property sales and franchise tax revenues that were in the budget. If you run a present value on that, and there's calculators on the web, I ran it through 2 or 3 of them just to make sure that the numbers came out the same. And you can see that in the property tax realm, we're still $1.5 million less money, actual money, than we had 20 years ago in property tax. We've done a little bit better on sales and franchise. You may recall that I did this same comparison last year, and so I put this up here so that you can see from year to year. So over the 20 years in FY 18, we were down 11%, and in FY 19, we're down a little more, 11% plus, which means we're sort of going in the wrong direction. And what that tells me, and of course we don't have a lot of data, this is just 2 years of data, that we're still not keeping up with inflation because we're going the wrong direction. So just for fun, this afternoon, I added in the additional funds that we would receive from the property tax increase, that $1.2 million. And you can see that's in the red below. It gets us a lot closer to the actual dollars we had 20 years ago from property tax, but still not quite there. So the certified tax rate, we received this last Wednesday. We got it, our office received it Friday. Came in at 0.002851, and the mayor's recommendation is to maintain the current rate, 3103. If you did that, that would mean an 8.82 increase to residents on their city portion of their tax bill. And that would generate the additional revenue, $1.2 million. And that estimates or ends up being an increase of about $27 for an average home in Ogden, and that's per year.
So just to be clear, on that 8.82%, that's 8.82% of the 18% of the total.
That's right.
So that we don't get confused with our citizens, that's not 8.82% of their total
Bill.
property tax, it's just of the city's portion.
That's right.
Okay.
And so that average increase of $27 is also only on their city's portion. If other taxing entities go through this same process, obviously that would add some additional funds.
So just kind of going along with Chair Hyer's comment, can you then clarify what would be, if we went with this rate, what percentage, what would be the end percentage for residents? Is it 18 plus 8?
No, so the 18 is just whatever the total percentage of all their bill is. And so I can't really answer that question until we see what all the other taxing entities do. It's not going to increase it a lot more. You know, it could make it 19%. But it's really just a percentage of their total bill. And so until we know what all the other taxing entities are doing, I can't calculate that.
I was happy to hear to get the feedback as to what the average home value is, so that we would know what the impact would be to people. And now that we know it's $27.17 per year, we know it would cost the average homeowner $2.26 a month.
Yeah.
Well,
Other questions about that?
I really appreciated your comparison the year over year. That really helped me understand it.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising. I mean, it was surprising to me when I went through that exercise last year to see just how much buying power. And really, we have to give credit to the administration for doing a great job of doing the best with what they have, over the last 20 years. Because I don't know that it's evident to our citizens that that's what's happening, is this constant reduction of the revenues that are available.
Can you clarify, Janine, and I can't say it myself because I don't understand it well enough, is how has that percentage changed over time? Who makes those decisions? Like with the school districts, 51% as compared to the county and the city, who makes those decisions?
So each taxing entity makes their own decisions.
Right.
Let's say, here we are in 1997, our tax rate was higher because that was 20 years ago and we hadn't gone through any tax increases, and yet we were generating 32% of the whole tax bill belonged to the city. So when each entity makes changes to their rate, then that obviously just it just adjusts on the whole. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
So this kind of means that basically some of the other entities have been raising their taxes year after year.
I think the county must have. I mean, I didn't double check that, but they maintained that 20, they were 21 in 1997 and they're 20 now. So I think that they must have had some small increases during those years. And obviously you can see that the school district has had some, they started before we did in trying to maintain their rate as well.
Another quick question about the revenue neutrality you mentioned. Is there a baseline and how is that calculated by the state? At what point is that baseline set on the amount that is of the baseline?
So the original law was passed in about 85, 84. So that would have been the baseline.
Whatever it was at that time?
So you're allowed to get the same amount of revenue that you had the previous year, plus new growth. So we are fortunate that we have a CED that's done really great work in the last few years, that we've been having that new growth to bring in additional money. We're also really fortunate to have BDO as additional revenue. If we didn't have that, I'm not sure, we probably would have had to start this process a lot sooner.
By chance know what was the law before 84?
I do not know. Do you, Mark?
It didn't require a truth and taxation hearing, so politicians weren't punished as much, and so they just went through and raised taxes as part of the budget. In 1984, they put in the truth and taxation law, and I think everyone shied away from doing property tax increases.
So, before you have a resolution, and one of the things that it does is sets the public hearings on the final budget. And we wanted to give citizens plenty of opportunities to address the council on this issue. So we will have one, a date open in June 26th in just a couple of weeks. We'll have another one July 10th. And then the final budget public hearing will be August 7th. And that will be the date that you as the council will take final action on the budget and on the certified tax rate.
That August 7th is the day we have to settle that, doesn't it?
Right.
Right, any questions about the certified tax rate? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to cover one more thing, and that is the A1 schedule, and it sounds like it's going to adjust a little bit more. But the one I had as of this morning would distribute that additional $1.2 million with $546,000 going to public safety loyalty pay. It would pay for an additional accountant, and that is a new position. It will pay for a full-time diversity affairs officer. It's also a new full-time position. That position is currently filled with a part-time position, and the rest of the funds were recommended to go to Union Station operations and repairs. So, as I mentioned, this resolution accepts for review the proposal to adopt a certified tax rate of 3.103, which is the current rate. It sets the public hearings, and it directs that we'll hold a work session to discuss a certified tax rate. Yeah.
Quick question. Can you please remind me, help me understand, why is this scheduled, is it 1A? Is that what it was?
A1? Mhm.
A1? Just for probably most people that may not understand and are not looking at these all the time, why is that separated and why is it called a schedule?
So the Schedule A, which you adopted with the tentative budget, was primarily what we call friendly amendments. So it's things that either the council wanted changed in the budget before you adopted it. It was some errors that we found when we were going through the budget that we corrected. And so that was just really some true up. That Schedule A is what that did. The Schedule A1, remember, the $1.2 million is not currently in the budget. And so the Schedule A1 recognizes that revenue and then appropriates it. And so it's not, because it's not in the tentative budget, we need a way to have something for the council to take action on and said, yes, that's where we.
These are kind of after the fact items, and that's why.
Right, and the Schedule A1, I mean, it's not set in stone. It's something that you can change.
Right, okay.
So it's dependent upon what we decide the certified
Absolutely.
tax rate could be.
Right, I mean, if you make a decision that you want to do something different with the certified tax rate, and it generates more or less than that $1.2 million, then we still have to appropriate those funds. Some of it can go to fund balance, but I think if you're going to be raising taxes, citizens want to know where you're going to be spending that money.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. All right, any discussion before we have a resolution? Okay.
I'm going to give it a shot.
All right.
I'd like to propose that Resolution 2018-5 for accepting the review of the proposal to adopt the tax rate for fiscal year 2018-19, to keep it at the same tax rate as adopted for fiscal year 2017-18, in consideration to adopt the fiscal year 2018-19 final budget, to set the public hearing for that, for the dates June 26th, July 10th, and August 7th.
Bravo, I second that.
Okay, we have a,
Can I be a part of history and third that?
that was very thorough. We have a motion by Councilmember Choberka, seconded by Councilmember Blair, to set the public hearing for June 26th, July 10th, and August 7th. And for Resolution 2018-5, this is a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, next item is public comments. This is an opportunity to address the council concerning any topic. Does anyone want to speak to the council today? Okay, doesn't look like we see anybody moving. Comments from the mayor?
I got a couple of things I'd like to put out there. I appreciated the opportunity to celebrate Juneteenth, and I think Ogden's diversity is one of its greatest assets. I think a lot of us saw that with the Arts Festival and the Twilight Concert Series on Thursday. I think that's something really important to get behind and to help push. Some of you may not have seen, Forbes magazine just produced a report that said Ogden is the 5th best city in the nation to invest in real estate right now. When you look at all the trends and where things are going, I think that's a great feather in the cap. I personally recall having grown up here when that was not necessarily the case, so I think that's great. They called it Best Buy Cities for Real Estate in 2018.
What magazine was these, Mayor?
Forbes.
Oh, Forbes, okay.
And Janine, I appreciate your comments and the breakdown about property tax. Just capturing new growth works when you're working with a city like Farmington, when you've got a small residential area and hundreds or potentially thousands of acres of bare ground where you can capture a whole bunch of new growth. I think the dynamic's entirely different when you work with a built-out community like Ogden City. We've been built out since really the 40s and 50s. So I think there is a lot of talk in the legislature right now about recognizing that you can't treat everybody exactly the same. You have apples and oranges, and you've got to find different ways to approach that with people. New growth just won't do it. I appreciated Ben's comment about this equates out to $2.26 per month for the average homeowner. And when I think that in 1984, when these laws were passed, we had about 63,000 residents and we had 144 sworn officers. We have the exact same amount of sworn officers today when we're approaching the mid-90s in terms of population. I think it's people need to recognize and realize that it's a different environment, and we've got to be realistic about where we're at and how we recognize value increases. The Forbes magazine article saying this is one of the most unique communities to invest in, one of the top 5 in the United States, I think speaks to the fact that we need to recognize value, not just a handful of other things that were passed almost 40 years ago that don't really reflect what's happening in our different communities. So I appreciated your presentation, and I'm certainly supportive of it as well, and I appreciate the council's support in that.
Thanks, Mayor. Council members, any comments?
I've got one, if no one else does.
Sure.
Just a quick story, I'll try to make it quick, but last week, Councilmember Blair's talked me into teaching my kids how to golf. So not being a great golfer myself, I'm giving it a go. He's promised to help me out, but I went and got my kids a set of clubs at your recommendation, took them golfing one time, and they have absolutely fallen in love with it. So to a point where they're fighting over the one set of clubs, and I'm tired of umpiring that. So we went and got a second set of clubs. Our youngest, Millie, was really excited to get that second set, so we took her to Mount Ogden Golf Course, and it just happened to be the day that our fire department was, the night before, our fire department was supporting a tournament to help with cancer. And so bravo to them for supporting that. And it was a little bit of a bummer to us when we found out that the course was undergoing a lot of operations and setup. But the reason I tell you the story is so that I can thank Maurice at Mount Ogden Golf Course for recognizing what needs to be done. He didn't know who I am. I'd never met Maurice until that night. But I said, hey, I got a rascal that's really pumped to use her new clubs, and if I could just get a hole or two. And he says, you know what? Why don't you take the 10th and the 18th tee? We won't charge you. Just go out there and let your kid have a good time. So thank you for your patience and listening to the story. But thank you especially to Maurice for doing what I thought was the right thing and doing it for the right reasons. If you would, please pass that along.
Great, thanks. Any other comments, council members?
I just want to say, I got to attend the Arts Festival this weekend, and there was a bunch of fun. They had all, and it was just, I went on Sunday, and it was gorgeous, so I think I saw Councilmember Chaperka there as well.
We called in the good weather for that as well.
Yeah, that was awesome.
All right, thank you. I wanted to kind of point out, I had a friend call me and was concerned about the tax rate in Ogden. He says, how come we have such a high tax rate? And I says, well, our tax rate is high, but our property values are, abnormally low. And so the dollar amount that each property owner is having to, be taxed for is relatively the same. It's not right. It's not like we're, having to pay really high taxes, high dollar amounts because of our values. So Ogden is still a wonderful place to live, and it's why people are coming here, is because we've got our real estate is affordable and inviting, and anybody can pretty well live here, which is kind of my way of diversity and some of the other things that make Ogden great. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. I think that's an important distinction. And so hopefully that helps people understand a little bit better. Also, I wanted to say this, that, as we've gone through this process, this budget process, council members, if you're a citizen and you're watching this, you need to understand that council members are really in your court. They're looking out for you, trying to make sure that everything is equitable and fair, and that things are, it's not a bunch of bureaucrats trying to figure out a way to get the most money out of each property owner. And so I hope that that gets recognized through this process. That's why we're having 3 public hearings, and we hope that citizens will participate in those. Okay, Councilmember Lopez has a comment.
Very brief. I can't help myself to note, as we're adopting this tentative budget, Mayor's previous comments about citizens' participation on something like this versus the issue of chickens. So, very interesting.
Yeah, he has made that comment, but he wasn't the only one. Okay, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Chair Nadolski, second by Councilmember Lopez to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's a wrap. Got another meeting in just a minute. Looks like we lost our people.
We're talking.
Yeah. Ready to go?
Not you.
Okay, well, good evening and welcome to our June 12th, 2018 Ogden City Redevelopment Agency meeting. Let the roll call reflect that all board members are present with the exceptions of Board Member Stevens, who has asked to be excused tonight. First item on our agenda is a public hearing, fiscal year 2019 budget. And we have Ms. Janine Eller-Smith, Executive Director of the Council Office. Welcome.
So I'm appreciate this opportunity to present the redevelopment agency budget to you. Just a brief review of the budget process for the RDA. You accepted for review on May 8th. We had one work session on May 15th, although there's been some other discussions during the other work sessions. And tonight is the public hearing and final action. This is a year-over-year example of the difference between the adopted FY18 and the proposed FY19. You notice that it's down significantly, $4.5 million, almost 28%. There's a couple of reasons for that. We do had a couple of project areas that were retired. They'd reached the end of their life. But I wanted to show you, I pulled this from the administration's presentation, the budget comparisons. So the tax revenues for the RDA are actually increased. It's the other revenues that are significantly decreased, and those other revenues are funds that generally come from the city, from BDO lease revenue, into the RDA to pay for other projects. And so in that regard, it's really good that the budget is down so much, because it indicates that, at least for now, there's not a lot of additional money going into the RDA. Speaking of BDO lease revenue, a significant amount of money that goes into the RDA comes from BDO, and I wanted to outline that for you here. There's $350,000 going to Trackline from BDO. There's $660,000 going into Continental, which is a project area that does not exist yet. We'll be working on that this year. And so that fund is actually not in the RDA budget, but I wanted to show it to you because it's actually for redevelopment projects. There was a $36,500 one-time money going into the Ogden River, $135,000 that's going into the Adams CRA for the art garage up there. And then we were removing the $25,000 that was originally proposed for East Central and the Big Sky. As you recall, that project's not quite ready to go, so that money will just go back into BDO fund balance until the administration needs it, at which time they'll bring it forward. So it's 25th Street and American Can were the two retiring RDAs. And the good thing that happens when an RDA retires is then all of the other taxing entities, including Ogden City, start receiving that property tax again into the general funds. The Schedule A that's attached to the budget is just the one action that removes that $25,000 from the East Washington project area. And so that just takes the final budget down to $15,884,225. So that is the RDA budget. I don't know if you want any more specifics or if that's sufficient.
Any questions for Janine?
Just a comment for the record. So you mentioned the Big Sky incentive. We removed that, so in addition to it not being ready, that item has some potential for perceived conflict for me since my wife works for the Big Sky. But since we won't be voting on allocating city dollars to the Big Sky tonight, I'm allowed to vote on the RDA budget without any conflict. But if that item does come back in the future, then I'll excuse myself from that consideration. And of course, I have not been involved in any of those discussions in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this? Okay. Look for a motion.
Being no public, I will go ahead and close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Blair, seconded by Vice Chair Nadolski to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay.
Chair Hire, I make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2018-3 adopting the budget for the redevelopment agency.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Lopez, seconded by Board Member Blair, to adopt the ordinance 2018-3. This is a roll call vote.
Aye.
Board Member Trawerka?
Aye.
Board Member Lopez?
Aye.
Board Member White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Nadolski?
Aye.
Chair Hire?
Aye. That passes unanimously. Okay. The next item is public comments. I think this will be quick. Our public left. It's kind of ironic when we're talking about budget that we can't keep people interested. So, comments from the executive director
Nothing at this time, thank you.
and board members. Okay, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Board Member Lopez, seconded by Vice Chair Nadolski to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay. All right, welcome everyone to the Municipal Building Authority meeting for June 12th, 2018. Let the roll call reflect that all trustees are present with the exceptions of Trustee Stevens, who has asked to be excused tonight. First item on our agenda is public hearing for the fiscal year 2019 budget. We have Ms. Amy Sue Maybe.
Thank you for your time.
Welcome.
So, before you this evening, as the Municipal Building Authority Board, is the MBA fiscal year 2019 budget. So just kind of as Janine reviewed, the timeline for this, so on May 8th is when you received this budget from administration, accepted that for review, and then set the public hearing for final consideration. May 15th, we had a work session to discuss the budget, and then on the 12th, which is today, it's our public hearing and consideration. So just a little bit of a breakdown to outline what the MBA does. So it basically helps to fund city facilities. So this shows the current outstanding debt for the facilities that have been funded through the MBA and basically what's being paid off at this current time. So this is as of March 1st of this year, so the outstanding principal, and then when the bonds will mature for Lindquist Field and the municipal building and public works building. So the proposed budget before you is a little different from last year's, but quite similar. The debt service payment has gone down a little bit, about $10,000, and so that's the budget before you, and then the charges for services remain the same. Any questions or?
Are there any questions for Amy? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this also is a public hearing. And inasmuch as there is no public present in the room, I will look for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
By trustee White, seconded by trustee Lopez to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, look for a motion on the resolution.
Chair Heyer, I make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2018-1 as presented.
Second. We have a motion by Vice Chair Nadolski, seconded by trustee Blair, to adopt resolution 2018-1. This is a roll call vote.
Trustee Blair?
Aye.
Trustee Troberka?
Aye.
Trustee Lopez?
Aye.
Trustee White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Nadolski?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. And that passes. Next item is public comments, and still there is no public. So, comments from the president.
President, it sounds a little intimidating, but I told Mark, my daughter's been president of the student body a couple of times, and Mark's always said, president outweighs mayor all day, every day. So at least I have one thing I can go back and say, hey, I got something on you. We're on equal ground in one place. But other than that, I have no further comment.
Mike, you want to hear hail to the chief or anything?
Nope.
Okay. Trustees, any comments?
I'll just say on the record again that I like the ring of President Kalma.
Second.
Yeah, that was a motion. I'm not going to call for a vote. Okay, look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Nadolski, second by trustee Lopez to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?